we ready to go forward? Okay, it's 1 o'clock. This is the regular meeting of the Ethics Commission of the Town of Chesapeake Beach. All members are present, also our council and our clerk. So we have a quorum and the meeting is now in session. First, would you please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first agenda item is the approval of the agenda. The agenda has been distributed. And does anybody have any objection or any comments on the agenda? The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. That was the meeting of April 20, 2022. The draft of the minutes has been previously circulated. Comments have been received, and we now have the official version of the minutes. Are there any comments, amendments, or objections?
One comment, item 8, schedule of next meeting, where it says next meeting will be June 1st. For the record, the date is June 13th. That's change that.
Item 8.
Item 8, schedule of next meeting.
Oh,
Just to note that it's June 13th, that's all.
Well, was that the date of the meeting that the meeting was set for?
That's what it was set for.
that was the meeting that was set for, and turned out that there were conflicts of interest, and we agreed to move it to today's date. So I don't think that
Just a comment.
the minutes
Yeah.
need to be changed or amended with a footnote.
Thank you.
The major item for today's meeting is the review of the public disclosure statements, which were due from elected and various other town officials in April. They were collected during the past month. And before we look at individual submissions, I ask your indulgence if I make some general remarks. Which I will do when I
Find your notes.
find my notes. Here we are. First, I think we should verify that we have received disclosure statements from all officials who are obligated to file this. And I have one question on the versions that I saw. I only saw the statements from two members of the elections committee. There should be at least a third.
And there was a third one filed with Frederick.
There was the third person on the election board was Peggy Hartman, whom is now a town council person. So she had filed as a town council.
Sharon, I
person.
couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
That was Peggy Hartman that was on the election board, and she is a council person now. So she did file a disclosure.
As a council member. As a council person, she filed, yes, and her disclosure is.
Oh, okay, that takes care of that. Other question I had, didn't see from the director of the water park, but I've since been informed that apparently the job title has changed.
Operations manager, and that's Carla,
Operations manager.
and that's
we
Carla
have-
Richard.
Okay, another point, in a number of cases, the addresses were incomplete, mostly by listing only the street address without saying Chesapeake Beach, Maryland. I would propose that we consider this a immaterial omission. Probably understood that those addresses refer to the so we don't need to chase after people. One or two. Next point, none of the elected officials disclosed in the section of earned income. This is income that they receive from the town itself. And do not know, last I know is that it's voluntary for the council members to ask for and then receive the compensation. And I don't know how many of them have actually elected to receive the compensation. Sharon, you should know that, I guess, institutionally.
Well, I don't particularly know because I'm not in the finance department, but I certainly can find out if
Okay.
they all, or if
Now, my
there's,
question to the commission is, do we want to know this? And should we go back to the, I think the mayor could be, in fact, the mayor and the council. And you have to tell us whether you receive compensation from the town.
Council wants to say something.
I could be wrong, but I believe that the mayor and Councilman Jaworski and Councilman G did disclose the payment. So those three,
Or others, for other people.
Councilman Payne, Councilman Moore, Councilman Cardiac, and Councilman Cardiac.
My next gripe refers to the matrix that is an exhibit to ISA ownership of real property in the town. And that whole format has to be changed. Not now, but for next time. There's not enough space to answer all the required information and fill it into little boxes. Also, some people try to be a little humorous with us. One respondent, whom I know quite well personally, answered the question from whom the property was bought by saying from the previous owner. Now, this is certainly a true statement. I think she was trying to poke a little fun at us. Others simply mentioned the name, Mr. Johnson. That is useless. And we should give some thought what we actually want to find out. What is the purpose of these inquiries? One answer to that question, for the second time in a row, I saw they run from the previous year. What the clock, there was one of the employees answered the question, from whom did you buy this piece of land? Pretty. Now, pretty. Yeah. Now, everybody around here who has anything to do with boats knows who Pretty is. He works on boats. So I had to laugh when I saw that. But again, the question is, especially if this information ages as it will under our current reporting format, filings. After a couple of years, I can see no conceivable reason why you should still go there as far as information. In my own case, I was bought more than 30 years ago. Who cares? And in any event, that information is already in the public domain.
So what?
Well, no, a question now is, should we gripe about these deficiencies and require corrections or completion, or should we consider this a harmless error for now and leave it our business to improve the format of the report, future report?
I would agree with you that the name of the previous owner, I don't see much of value to it, even as a recent transaction to be reported. And as far as the other omissions, like the salary or compensation they received, I think if they have, they should disclose it.
So for now, we let it go.
No,
Oh, don't,
we want the salary information. We do want that.
Okay.
or whoever is compensated.
I mean, physically, the information can be provided on the continuation sheet.
One of the, at least a couple of council members had indicated their salary. I can't remember which section it was, but they had indicated.
They did, three of them, or we did identify salary from Town of Chesapeake Beach. We checked off, yes, we have the teacher identified from the Town of Chesapeake Beach.
And if I could go back to your earlier comment about the address, perhaps next year in the address box, we are explicit in terms of the city, state, and zip code, not just the line, because there may be an assumption that
Gentlemen, what I envision we should do is really go back to the text of the ordinance, the catalog of potential sins that the ordinance addresses, and see, are all the questions truly relevant to that particular concern, or should we ask other or additional questions? And right now, I haven't gone through that exercise, but we have nearly a year to go over that and design a better format, a more workable format. We made some improvements to the original form prior to this year's round of responses, and that eliminated a lot of useless annoyance where people forgot to check boxes. On the major questions, you say no, and then there are sub-questions that also have to be answered. And a lot of them just forgot to do that. We also have another problem. One or two responses were the real estate section was not signed, but the form as a whole was signed. And we consider this material enough to send that was 2 or 3 forms. It goes back and say, fix your signature here and give it back to us. Or should we let it go?
you see the attachment for real estate requires another signature. I can't recall that.
The statement before the attachment,
Right.
that is if they are using the information from the prior year. If they're not using information from the prior year,
Then they have to sign.
no,
They don't.
if they're not using, then it goes back to the form as a whole. If the attachment is from a prior year, then they have to sign saying that there's been no change.
Yes.
So that the signature denotes that it's a legal document. That the signature
But
wasn't made into it at all.
I think we also have a situation where the form itself was signed on the cover sheet. And really verified, memory now. But I think I saw 1 or 2 which goes to question A. It says I attached the prior year's statement, but didn't sign that statement.
In those cases, I think it needs to be signed. In the cases that the
Well, I'll take another look and, it's easy enough to ask, but it is no signature. Okay, at letter I, contains 2 questions. My beef is with the second question. And, the question is, did you influence or attempt to influence the awarding of a contract by the town? Without exception, the answer would be no. Now, with respect to at least the elected officials, mayor and council, the answer no is plainly wrong, because it's their job. That's why we elected them, to influence the awarding of contracts. That would also be true to a number of town employees. In particular, I would speculate the treasurer, the town administrator, the town attorney, possibly. No doubt the attorney will have said more than once, don't sign this contract. I'll give you the reasons tomorrow in writing. Also, those division heads that are consulted on a contract that affects their particular bailiwick. Public Works, for example. The town contemplates to let a new contractor pave some roads. And, no doubt, or I take back no doubt, in all likelihood, the Public Works manager, Jay Berry, will take a keen interest in that bid, and will no doubt be the guy he is, not hesitate to open his mouth and say, this particular bidder has a somewhat shaky reputation. I would advise against awarding the contract to that particular company, or comments of that nature. Now, I suppose that everybody interpreted that question: did you attempt to influence awarding of a contract, to say something? Did you do that where it was none of your goddamn business? That's something that we would want to know. But the way the question stands, I don't think we let it sort of simply sit there and believe the council members that they simply slept through the meetings where they have to vote on a contract. What do you like this committee to do? Shall we assume that the question means something somewhat different than the plain wording? Or should we just let it go this time around and improve the question for the next year?
Question, what does it mean to say influence? That's the heart of it. What does that mean? And I think that's different for each individual. Having a conversation about it or actually pushing it.
Well, you can push for it or you can push against it.
Yes, exactly.
And presumably a council member may have said, this looks a little bit high. Or I've dealt with contract awards, contract bids in my own working life, and it looks suspiciously low. There must be something wrong, and we certainly don't want to give it to somebody who then cuts corners. And I think the plain meaning of the words influence, yeah, he sits here right at this table and wants to influence, that's what he should do.
In the best interest of the town. Exactly.
So back to my question: should we rephrase that question and tell everybody what we really meant with that question? Did you attempt to influence the awarding of a contract in a situation where you have no standing, no official standing to get involved in the way you did?
Or if I could suggest, At first, I don't think for this year we should go back and ask people the clarified meaning of influence. But I do think that influence is a pretty loose terminology to be interpreted by different people differently. Perhaps we can come up with more specific things, such as were you involved in evaluation and award of any contracts. So if a council member has influenced the evaluation of a contract, as you cited, that the bid is too high, well, that's an involvement in evaluation of the contract. So I would suggest that we come up with the right wording for the next go around.
And, for this year, or do we approve it for next year?
Next year.
Next year.
Next year. Yes.
Okay, I'm all in favor of that. Council has.
No, that's fine. The only point I was gonna mention was that you may have a council member whose job it is to help the council evaluate bids and proposals, and in the course of that, though, that council member may try and steer, the contract to an individual or company with whom they have a business relationship.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what this is
And
getting.
I think, that's what we want to
Right.
avoid. Fine. So, when we redesign the questionnaire, our question should be aimed at, that kind of improper influence or conflict of interest. To flush that out, at least give us for the powers that be, reason to say, well, let's probe this a little further.
You have a personal, professional, business relationship with any individual or company whose proposed potential contract you review, or something like that.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so next year. No, I think that's all I have. There were some writing errors. One person on the Planning and Zoning Commission described her position as planning and commission. Very good. One final thing, and this refers to one filing only, is by the town engineer. It seems that it's a single owner with a number of people working for him. The person who signed is the owner or principal. He filled the form in the name of the business, the corporation. Ordinance clearly envisions that the town engineer person, employee of rest of that disclosure form. Correct. If the disclosure is the corporate entity, eliminates other questions. Did you receive earned income from your individual filed in his own name? Then, of course, that. So, is folded disclosure form back to Green Merrick and explain that yes, the town has a contract with your firm, but this here refers to your role as the town engineer.
Individual, yes.
Before you do that, just verify, because I thought that the ordinance was amended to require the disclosure to be made by the firm if the town has the contract with the firm to provide the services.
So is that not a conflict of interest? Specifically, if you are the town engineer and your firm is doing work for the town? It seems like that's the direct conflict of
No,
interest.
the contract to provide town engineering services is with the company. And the company designates John Doe, or in this case,
I do know, right?
as to provide the town engineering services. Is that right, Sharon?
But is he an employee of the town?
No.
No, okay,
No. He's an
I see.
employee of the company.
of the company. I see, okay.
So then that would refer back to the engineering firm.
Right. And I question even then, why is the firm required to file?
Because that's what the
Disclosure.
ordinance- I believe that's what the ordinance says.
And is that true for all the firms that are doing business with the
If there's-
town?
If there's a contract with the company to provide the services.
Let's say landscaping, they contract to a landscaping company. Does that company need to provide disclosure?
No,
No.
because landscaping companies are not required to provide financial disclosure and public disclosure for it.
Right. So what is different between the two companies?
Because I believe the ethics ordinance says the town engineer is one of the people required to file.
Specifically,
We have a town engineer, we have a town treasurer, landscape company.
The designated town engineer is an individual, he would be a professional engineer. He would also be an employee or she or a partner or whatever of that firm. But I didn't, I may not have the final current text of the ordinance.
I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time, but
But it would be the last. So what I have
Okay,
here
this,
is
this
the,
is section 25-30. See, I'm just dealing with financial disclosure. This article applies to where a position is filled through a contract with a firm effective 1 year from the adoption of this ordinance, the firm itself.
So it is an actual position, that's what it is, that's the difference.
well, yes, I see it. I didn't consciously see it from. Okay. All right, so I take back what I said, that we should send this form back. But if it's a firm, then we would be looking for other kinds of information, wouldn't we?
Well, if the firm is filling it out, the firm will be filling it out on behalf of the firm and anybody, employees and officials of the firm as well. At least that's my thinking.
I mean, we've,
And I would also suggest we want to put this on the list of things to look at in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I believe so. Right now, sitting here now, I have to go, decide. I mean, all other questions are aimed at a particular individual person. And where it's a firm, we might want to say is there different or additional information that we look for that kind of response?
Sharon, do you remember, because I don't, why that particular provision was put in there?
No. No, I don't remember.
What section was it?
25 dash. -30 C.
Now, this concludes my particular gripes.
May I have the floor just for a minute? I have two issues, not tied to any specific form, but there are two things I noticed as I was doing the review, preparing my summary, and you'll note that they're on the last page. Of the elected officials, only Councilwoman Bodine listed stock ownership on Schedule E as an interest in the company. Typically, in all the other jurisdictions I work with, just about everybody has identified stock ownership as an interest in a company. So it may be that none of the other officials own any stock. In which case, if they say, no, I have no interest in the company, that'd be accurate. But if they do have stock ownership in the company, then I think that there's some issues with respect to their filing. Now, historically, this group and the other commissions that I work with typically don't go beyond don't go beyond the actual filing to try and assess whether the filings are accurate or not. More of the review has the filings been properly submitted? Have they signed? Is everything filled in? Everything checked correctly? Things like that. But I'm not suggesting the commission should do anything about this particular issue. I just want to bring it to your attention that is something common to most of the filings other than Councilwoman Bodine.
In the other jurisdictions where you see that, are there the disclosure, is it related to the companies that do business with the town or any stock?
The disclosures are very similar to what we're doing here. Any stock,
Any stock.
interest in the company, because it may be that we make a contract to come before the town, in a large company, large corporation that's traded on the national exchanges. And theoretically, you want to know, does council member X or town administrator Y or whoever it may be, who is looking at this contract for the town, do they have any particular interest in that company that might influence their the way they would proceed on recommending favorably or unfavorably on that particular contract. So that's the rationale for it. I apologize.
No, it's fine. Now, that does not preclude them from making a vote on something. It simply discloses that I have stock in these companies.
And
Well, I'm sure I think the town still has a contract with Comcast for the cable. And that is, as far as I know, part of Xfinity. And that's a big company. A lot of people will own shares. So is there more or less customary phraseology for that particular question that you see with?
The question is very similar to what we have here in our form.
So
It's just that people, I guess, don't associate owning 25 shares of XYZ as owning an interest in the company. Sometimes we have a couple of elsewhere, elected officials who may submit 25 schedules, one for each of the stock companies they own, or they may put them all on one chart. One of them takes his annual report from his brokerage company, fills out, crosses off the irrelevant information. So it's not as if this is an outlier here. It's something they typically don't recognize. So again, I'm not suggesting, I have no way of knowing whether any council members own stock. But I just found it curious that only one council member identified as a stock ownership. And I think because of the So I'm not suggesting that the commission necessarily want to or should do anything about it now or this year. If they want to look at the question and make sure that it's very clear that for next year, that this includes ownership of the stock.
I have a question,
Yes, sir.
somewhat related. Has the town ever offered training on how to fill out the form? And would that be beneficial for someone new coming in? So that you don't miss things,
To my knowledge, in a few years that I've been working with the commission, we haven't done that. I don't know that, I haven't done that with respect to any of the other commissions I work with. Often or sometimes, there's explanatory letter that goes with the form, just pointing out certain things that particular commission has seen errors, made in prior years.
It's the kind of thing though, that if you miss something, omit something, or don't tell the complete story, it gets you into hot water, into trouble. It's a suggestion.
Now, one thing you could do, again, not advocating it, but after the forms are distributed, make available a question and answer for anybody who's interested in the election, whether official or employee who's interested in having questions answered about the form and how to complete it, have maybe somebody else available, to answer the question. But I think that in the past, what we've done is each year we look at the errors that have been made in the prior year's filing and try to clean up the form and put in bold, something in bold, or something to draw individual attention to the particular issue. And like I think this year, I remember with our form and another form where there may be two questions on a sheet in red or bold. There are two questions on the sheet. Did you answer both of them? Just to focus people so they don't miss that.
FYI, there are a couple, 3, 4 YouTube videos on how to fill out financial disclosure. So that would be a suggestion just to pass along to staff, elected officials, commissions.
My thought is that the more effort we put in to making the questions clear so that there is no ambiguity in the question. That's probably the best payback for us, because oftentimes even the effort goes in to making a video, and typically most people don't have the time to watch it and just go ahead and fill out the form.
And you're making an assumption. The assumption is that people will be diligent in reading and trying to understand what they're supposed to do, instead of just doing it pro forma and rushing through it. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Right. Oh, yes. As a minimum, I think the expectation would be that you answer the question on the form, and the question has to be very clear and not be interpreted. So I think the effort that we talked about in terms of revising the form, we need to keep these issues in mind and making sure that if the disclosure, for example, for stocks is for any stock, individual stock that you own, well, that has to be very specifically laid out.
Tim, I have one other point. When we're finished with that, this part of the discussion. I don't know if the chairman thinking. Well, let me go on to my next point and then we can come back.
Okay. Point.
Very few filers identify co-owners of properties that they own. Schedule A. It may be that none of them have co-owners, but they're all owned individually. But the exception, the rule rather than the exception in the disclosure form, at least elsewhere, has been that individuals usually or typically own the property with another person, often a spouse. Sometimes with a child. So that jumped out at me, that there was only one or two filers, I think, to identify a co-owner.
That should come up and eventually wash out when we redesign what is
Right.
now on that matrix.
Right.
And I can envision a format which makes it easy for the user. You can even give choices. Usually it will be spouse. A child, close relative, which we define, and then other, in the relatively infrequent cases where there is somebody else, then they would have to write that thing. So I see work sessions in our future.
Yes.
Thank you, Fred.
Well, happy to help.
Now, I've said my piece about my observations or gripes and prejudices. Is there more to be said about individual particular forms or you're nodding yes?
I went through, while we were talking, my review summary and kind of scratched out the things that are no longer to be considered by the commission this year. And that left a handful of things that I think ought to be brought to your attention, and you all to decide whether you want to do anything or not. Just bear with me for a second. The first one involved Councilmember Jaworski Form A, item 2, that's a property he owns in San Juan County, New Mexico. 3 of the entries in that line, in that road, are identified by 3 dots. The information is not fully disclosed. For instance, the month and year required, required, 1998 upon dot. Value when acquired, no idea. Mortgage lien holders or co-owners, jointly owned by dot. So the question is, the information hasn't been fully disclosed, perhaps because there's no way to get all this information on the form, or for some other reason. The commission has to decide whether you think that is material enough to request him to supplement.
Now, for some reason or another, when they go on the website and fill these forms out, and you go to print them out, one disclosure statement has all of that information where you were talking about dot, where you said 1998 upon, then you said dot. On the other one that you print out, it says death of my father. So I think that
It's
it
the
really
form,
needs
it's
to
the
be,
form.
yeah,
It's the online form.
but I did print out each one that actually, just like Mr. Jaworski, that he did have it all written out, but when you print out this form, it just doesn't put it all out there.
The
But I-
information might be there, we just aren't seeing it.
Right, on that one form that they sent, that it sends over to me.
So Sharon, is that something that whoever has the print function set up can fix so that everything is included in the printout that we receive?
And I think that goes back to what Peter was saying about redesigning that matrix, you know. Because like I say, they put the information in, but when you print it out, it doesn't all completely come on.
That may not be an issue. That may not be. If the individual submitted it, it's just that's not showing up, that's not something.
Right, except that I think there is a printout that has that information. I think
Yes.
that's the I'm sorry, that's the printout that needs to be circulated then for that particular case, until we fix the form next year.
That's just an example when you were talking about Mr. Jaworski. And I had printed out the other piece there because I saw that he did, complete it.
Thank you for that, Sherry. So I think the commission has to decide whether you want to do anything about that, or whether Sharon's recommendation is sufficient.
I would say that Sharon's explanation is sufficient for this individual.
I agree. I think we should let it rest. And also in light of the fact that next time around, we will no doubt have better formulated questions.
Okay, the next one is Planning and Zoning Commission Chair Larry Brown. And the issue is item B on my review sheet, Form A continued. You note that under there are two properties, and under the acquired from column, the one property is acquired from D Brown, and the other property, B Small Estate. Question whether the commission feels that those are sufficient identification of the individual or person from whom the property were acquired.
My view is we should let it go, just like largely because the form we are using really discourages more extensive identifications of the previous owners. And, you know, if I were that person, and the town came to me and said, well, you didn't tell us this and this, you left me no space. It's your form.
And furthermore,
have to be
we
a
talked
little
about,
more user-friendly.
and furthermore, we talked about maybe we question the value of that particular information, and we may not even have it in the future because something that has been bought 20, 30 years ago, or even recently, I'm not sure what difference it makes.
The next one is Janet Rutke, planning and zoning commissioner. My issue there is Form A continued, the column for mortgage REIT holders and co-owners, and the only thing it says is that it's CBC. I have no idea what CBC is, who CBC is, and I have to commission whether you all feel that that is sufficient. I don't know whether that's a lender, whether that's a co-owner. The property was inherited in 1985. It says it was inherited when acquired from the VA. Something doesn't make sense.
Now, see, that's another thing with that, form online. It gives you that drop down where it says residential, inherited, bought, and when you print out the one form, it does tell that. Just like Jan, she has that, how was ownership obtained, she has bought. But that other form that has that drop down in it just comes out, just like you just said, residential, inherited. So the forms really need to be looked at online. What's on there that, they submit. But the CDC now, I don't know what that is unless it's Citizens Bank, I don't know.
Yeah.
But she may not have had room to put it all on there, I don't know, and she abbreviated CDC, I don't know.
Well, the purpose of this, but she's on the planning and zoning commission. Let's hypothetically say that some matter, application, whatever, comes before the commission. And somebody should be able to look at a form and see, is there any relationship between somebody she or any commissioner, has a business or property relationship with, and whoever it is that is submitting the application. And I'm not sure that CBC would allow anybody reasonably to make that determination. But again, that's your call. Could ask for some clarification, or if you think for this year, that's sufficient. Then let it go.
I think with this year, we let it go. I think for future reference, we fix the form. And, okay, that makes sense.
agree with that.
Okay, next, Kathleen Barrow, planning and zoning commissioner. Form A, continue the first one, the month and year acquired to the December, dot. So, again,
She has 1998 on that other form. It's just that when it prints out, it doesn't have all that. But she does, I do have the copy here of what she put on there. It's December 1998, so.
the other one question I have is under the mortgage lien holders and so on, the co-owner.
Yeah, she just has co-owners on it.
Again, that doesn't in any way give you identity of who the co-owners are, whether they're family members, whether they're other people in town, whether it's whatever. Whatever it may be. So,
Sounds like we're going to have a long working session to work on that form
Yeah.
to make sure that the prints and thing go well and it's very clear of everything. But for this year, again, I would propose that we don't circle back.
Right.
Because again, some of the information is provided and it's just not printed in our printout.
It's our issue.
Right, it's our issue, really.
I understand the theory of having this matrix. I think it's causing more problems than just having
I agree.
written questions.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. Okay. Mr. Command.
Yes.
Month and year acquired, there's nothing in there. Property was shut down. Do you happen to know the call?
Yeah, so that's surprised that you put that in there. Is that what you have too?
I didn't catch you working on it. Who's working on it?
Me?
Oh, on you? Okay, Jay, what are we looking for?
On Form A, continue, the month and year acquired.
Yeah, I don't have anything on here for that. You must have just missed that.
Do you know that opinion? Or you checking? That would suggest that.
I would do that.
Yeah, check records and then you can work with Sherry to amend the form. Just type it in the check. Or handwrite it in the check. Let me just note that for Chair, he did file a supplemental clarification on the item 13B to identify the names of the major persons on the life estate that we hold. So,
Yeah, I get that.
right, yeah, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that's why I didn't mention it, because you were correcting the issue. Okay, Dominique Soroka, for the Board of Elections. There's, Form A continued, there's no information supplied in the mortgage lien holder or co-owner column. Don't know whether that's because there is none, or because she forgot. Which is a little bit-
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's not.
an omission. The question whether the commission believes that is significant enough failure to identify the mortgage lien holder and co-owner, or to say none, provide some information in that column.
I think if it's an omission, it would make sense to get that completed.
Same issue as you had.
Yes.
Okay. Teresa Frederick. Board of Appeals. Position with the town on the cover page, just says check each. Doesn't say what the position is with the town. We know it's Board of Appeals, but she is signing the closure statement of the road. So the question is whether, even though we know she's on the Board of Appeals, whether we believe she should supplement that file to specifically identify the position.
I lost you. Which person?
We're talking about Teresa Frederick.
Board of Elections, right?
Sorry?
Board of Elections?
Board of Appeals.
Oh, Board of Appeal. Oh.
Your call.
Since we know her position, I don't feel strongly to circle back.
Yeah.
But again, these are the type of things we need to make sure that they're very clear that
Well,
Where they-
how much more clear can it be when it says position with the town?
that's it, right? Yeah. So we are going to.
For some reason or other. Pardon?
Maybe bold letters.
No,
And we are not asking for the name of the town, we are asking for the position.
send permission to let that one go, or to ask her to fill it in.
Whatever we do, we need to be consistent, so, and I would say that because this time, we're doing what she is.
The objective is disclosure, knowing facts. There's no concealment.
Next is James, I'm sorry, Carla Richard.
The operations.
And that was on Form A continued. The first property, the Preston Lane #2 property, acquired from previous owner. And then it's ... Is her information on the printed, on the form you got printed out?
Yep,
To
previous,
identify,
I have a previous owner, Linda Hardy, yes.
pardon,
I do have a previous owner on here. She does have a previous
the
owner.
name of the previous one?
Which property? The first one or the
The
second?
first one.
Linda Hardy.
Okay, so again, the issue is the way it was printed out, as
Mhm.
opposed to the fact that the information wasn't provided.
Right, exactly.
James Berry,
You don't talk about Gritty?
oh, this is gritty. So, on Form A continued are the identities of the person from whom the properties in rows 1 and 3, that's the John Roll Court property and the David Wayne, the 8726 David Wayne property were acquired from sufficient. For John Roll Court, it indicates acquired from the builder QBH, which I believe is Quality Built Homes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And unless the chair had told us who Gritty was, for those of us who don't live around here, I wouldn't have the foggiest of who Gritty. And I don't, personally, I don't
He
think.
probably doesn't even know Gritty's last name.
Yeah.
And that's why I put Gritty.
Well, your call, Commissioner.
The same information, including Gritty, was provided the previous year. And at that time, the commission just let it go.
And this is the same form that was filed the previous year and was approved by the commission the previous year. And
I don't think it would look good if we write about it now. I guess coming back to that same point, we are not entirely, the commission is not entirely guiltless when it comes to some of these deficiencies.
We've allowed this to happen, so it's now our fault.
so that concludes, the individual issues that I wanted to bring to your attention that go beyond the broader issues that the chair discussed earlier at the beginning of this discussion.
I will make mention that our counsel, Frederick C. Sussman, also completed financial statement, and it was okay. Thank you. After all, everything,
Nothing to add.
That concludes.
Well, Mr. Chairman, do you want to have the commission adopt a motion to approve and accept all the filings except for whatever filings may need to be corrected? You want to wait till the next meeting?
Counselor, I think we probably should have a formal resolution from you.
A motion is fine.
I can make that motion.
I second that.
Passes.
You good, Brett?
I'm sure Sharon will translate that into an official motion.
And let us proceed to the next agenda item, review of pending proposals to amend the ethics ordinance and development of action plan. This is something which we had talked about at our last meeting. It goes back fairly deeply into the history of this commission with a totally different cast of characters. Prepared a large number of amendments, proposed amendments to the ordinance. It was presented to the town council as a work session in early January of this year. has been sitting there quietly. And following our last meeting, I talked to the mayor about it. I was assured that the non-action on the part of the council does in no way imply that they rejected or in any way unreceptive for an amendment, which we view as an improvement of the ordinance, and in so many words, invited us to revive this particular project. Now, I haven't done anything further. I was away most of the past month, and what I think you should have seen the memorandum that was submitted to the council. Extensively, it comes from the town administrator, but the actual landsman was the previous chairman. And we don't have a complete record of detailed comments, objections, proposals for improvement, or whatever feedback may have come from the council. What we do have is a written comment by the mayor, but not a point-by-point, just addresses some more general issues. And of course, since this past January, a number of further amendments have been approved by the commission, which are not yet reflected in those old working documents. And so what I could envision is that I will put together a supplemental memorandum to the council for everybody to review, which would basically say, referring to the piece of paper you saw 6 months ago, here is another piece of paper, mercifully, but shorter, and that would list the amendments that we approve. The second piece of paper, I think the best would be an amended redlined version of the ordinance. I think that would make it easier for the council members to go through the ordinance to see where we want to amend something, and then at a work session provide whatever information may be requested. And does anybody have a better idea how to revive this project?
What were the comments that the mayor made?
Were
there-
I have it. With me, I think. Yes, that's.
Perhaps, this is the original version.
That's the original, but there was, there's a document dated January 7th. But in substance, this is what the town council proposes.
I was really asking for the essence of the comment. Was it that it's too long, it's too detailed?
don't have the mayor's comments here, but that's.
One of the major things the mayor and council were concerned about were limitations that the commission was recommending for elected officials to serve on other boards and commissions. And the whole point, and I'm going to ask Sharon to perhaps copy these three documents and email them to everybody. I went through my files this morning to try and pull out things that I thought might be relevant for our discussion today. And Mr. Chairman, I don't have that. Waiting to show me from Holly to the mayor.
Yep.
But the point is that the major thing they were concerned about was putting too many limits on elected officials being able to serve in volunteer capacity. This is a volunteer community, and it's hard enough getting people to volunteer for all these different positions. So don't make it too difficult. And that was a major one. There was concern about the amount of the late fee, fine for not filing, the delayed filing the financial disclosure form, increasing from $2 a day to $5 a day. There was some concern about that. And something else having to do with gifts. I was supportive of the proposed change dealing with gifts, not accepting. I think the issue in question had to do with free tickets. Those were the three comments that the mayor made on behalf of the council.
So based on that, I think your suggestion is I think is the best path forward in terms of coming up with a red line version of what would be the revised.
I suppose the question you're asking is, should we change the original proposal in light of Pat Mahoney's following?
Well, on February 4th, the former chairman sent a letter, email to the mayor saying that we reviewed his recommendation and concerns and they are recommending that certain of the proposals be scratched. So that.
Yeah, we can, I'll take a look at that.
So Sharon, I'm going to give you these three and ask you to scan them. And send them out. But it seems that maybe two-step approach. Number one, your original suggestion that you go ahead and kind of synthesize what's been put forward before with the modifications the commission has already agreed upon, and then perhaps and then do a red line to show how it would actually look in the work. Red line is not going to help the council or the town attorney in putting together revisions, amendments to the code. But the red line will help the mayor and council understand and reflect upon what it will look like if commission recommendations are accepted.
Getting back to the substantive issue, I would yield to the mayor's point of view, and morally justified to say, no, I reject your concerns, and I don't think that I don't think this would be the right thing to do, and in any event, I don't think it would fly, because that is not going to change his mind. And I think you probably have enough sway over the council that they would not go against his wishes and keep the more onerous restrictions. And any objection to?
I think we should definitely consider mayor's comments.
So, what can we accomplish today? We can agree to revise the existing change proposal in accordance with the mayor's concerns as expressed in the February document, and without having particularly wording in front of us, in line 2, word should be changed to this or that. I don't think we want to go through that exercise. No, okay, so I will so move. And, then, I think at the next meeting, we'll have to revisit this subject and make a decision on that the papers which will be had by then, which everybody will have seen and commented necessary. And say, this is now a go ahead. And we take up the mayor's offer to hold a work session for the council to discuss this. Then we will get it done.
It seems like this particular issue is higher priority than the disclosure form revisions.
We have time on it, so
Right.
sure.
So we should probably tackle this next.
And we can make a decision later on whether or not we need a work session.
Now, the redesign of the disclosure questions. Anybody going to volunteer to maybe create the first sketching the way the new and improved disclosure form might look?
Not messing mine up, so no.
Precedents that can be disclosed to.
Well, I think I provided, before we came up with this report, and I think I provided samples of forms that we told you.
We did that.
Oh, back in the day,
Sorry?
back in the day, back underneath the field.
I think maybe Phil did a lot of that without
Right.
bothering to pull in his inattentive read. I don't know.
Look,
There's-
you tell me when you like me to do it. Happy to.
Well,
Would it be productive, Fred, if you look at the online form that exists and suggest with revisions from your perspective? You have seen many of these forms. and to just make sure that,
That will only work if he can see the entire form. We printed out something that didn't have all the information in it.
I guess maybe I'm confused. Does everybody who file disclosure go online and fill it, or is there another form, a paper form
You
that,
can print out paper form.
and fill out the paper form?
Yeah.
But the fill out paper form still has the matrix, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So that doesn't help. Let me provide the commission with some samples from some of the other jurisdictions. Yeah. I thought I had done that before, but maybe I did for somebody else.
Well, it certainly hasn't reached any of the
Hadn't reached
present
any.
members.
Yeah,
I
not with
will
this.
take care of that.
Not with this group, but you might have done something. I mean, it's been 5 years since we started this, so you might have done something with Phil way back in the day on back, that just rings a bell with me, but not in
I have
recent.
no, time flies and I'm losing perspective on something.
Yeah, so,
Okay. Sometime I'll try and do it next week or so. Before the next meeting anyway.
Anything else on agenda item C, 4C? Any additional matters for discussion?
I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our newest commission member.
Thank you. Thank you.
Comments by commissioners and members of the public? Tomorrow is going to be the full moon, and it'll be the strawberry moon.
And what does that mean? Strawberry moon.
I think it sometimes has a pinkish color. That must have to do with the relation between the time of moonrise and the sunset. But I still think the moon is made out of blue cheese.
So the date for our next meeting?
All right. Schedule the next regular meeting of the commission.
How frequently do we meet? Is it roughly about a month?
Usually, monthly meetings. And, require a little bit of work to do the revision, paperwork prepared.
July, about a month from now, July 13, 14, 15 is okay with me.
14. That's
14th. The thing in the middle of the month, 13, 14, 15. I'll be here.
14th, I'm not going to be able to.
I don't have a calendar book, which is the Monday.
Monday is 17th.
So the Monday.
Monday is the 11th.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
It's 11th or 18th. 11th, I'm not here.
Fred, 18th?
18th,
So 18th July.
well,
Okay.
the issue here is I have to be here for the Board of Appeals meeting at 7.
Oh,
It's a long day.
Well, we can have our meeting later,
At what
perhaps.
time at evening hour?
Work you to death.
Uh, I prefer not to have a vote on
You can't do the 19th because that's a primary day.
that. How about the, working Monday? How about the 25th?
25th?
I'm not gonna be coming up now.
Yeah.
No, 25th.
I'll be on Cape Cod.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, I know you would have to, yeah. You're right. July is a month that you take vacation, so.
Right.
Just,
Yeah, that's,
it's,
that's,
I thought it was August, whatever. July and August, summer.
August the 1st.
August 1st is good.
Looks good on my end too.
That was good for me.
Okay.
What time?
Sold.
1 o'clock.
What day is that?
It's Monday.
Monday.
Yes.
So we are adjourned.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Always a pleasure.
That was the longest meeting we've had.
It's not because of me, I hope.
Actually had business to do.